All right, hey guys, this video is going to go over more transforming functions. So we're going to get to the other transformation rules that we did not get to yesterday. All right, so here quickly are the ones that we went through yesterday. So if I gave you a parabola, you guys can look down here. This is just the basic parabola, f of x equals x squared. Okay, we learned a couple different rules. We learned if I gave you this rule, if I said do f of x, and then I said add 2 to it. Okay, we learned that this would be a vertical translation, or it would slide it up 2. Now instead of adding 2, if I subtracted 2, it would slide it. So if I went back to the original one, it would slide it down. Okay, and then the other 2 rules that we learned were if it was this f of x plus k, it would translate it left k units. So it would take it and move it left k units. Or if it was the other way, it would move it right k units. Okay, so we learned the sliding rules or the translating rules. So we learned what you could do to move it up, down, left, or right. Okay, this would be the same if it was a line, but we just worked with a parabola. So today we're going to learn the other rules that we left blank in our table. Okay, so you guys should have already kind of explored these a little bit, but I'm going to give you a parabola. So you guys can see here, I graphed this green parabola, okay? It's in green here on the graph. So this is my original function. So just keep that in mind, the green one. Now, here is a rule that we did not go over yet in any video. It says take the function and do the opposite, or take the negative of that function. So look how I wrote it down here first. I did this in Desmos. I took the entire function, you guys see I just rewrote it, and I put the negative sign, made the entire function negative. So I just put the negative sign out in front of the parentheses. Now you could distribute it. You could turn it to negative x squared, negative 6x, negative 8. Be the same thing. Now look what happens. It's graphed in gray down here. What do you notice about that? Well, it looks like it took this and it reflected it over which axis? It just looks like it flipped it over the x-axis. So you might want to take notes on that. This rule right here actually is a reflection over the x-axis. Okay, let's take a look at the other one. So my second rule right here in red is I took the function and I just made the x the opposite value. So look how I did this in red down here. So again, remember you're always going off this green one, your original one. I took the x value, made it negative, and then I wrote the squared plus, it said 6, so I wrote the 6. I took the x, made it opposite, and then it said plus 8. So here's my new function. Now I could times that out, rewrite it a little different, but I just wrote it like this to start with. Now come look at the red graph compared to the green one. If you kind of look at it, this green point ended up over here, right? This green one ended up over here. So this time, this rule right here is a reflection across this vertical line, or the y-axis. All right, so we just learned 2 new rules. Anytime you see either of these 2 rules, again, if the negative sign's out front, you're reflecting over the x-axis. If it's on the inside, it's going to be a reflection across the y-axis. So please add those to your notes. And that would work if I gave you an absolute value function or a different parabola, but I just did it with this one here. All right, let's check out our next rule. And again, you already explored these a little bit, but we'll see what happens. So this time, let's say I take my function, whatever it is, and I multiply the whole thing by 2. Okay, so here's my original. It's in blue. You guys can see the blue line down here, the parabola. Now, for this green one, it says take the entire function and times it by 2. So you can see I put the 2 here, times it by my entire function. This would be the same as writing 2x squared. Okay, so I could even write that down here quick. It's the same as saying 2x squared. All right, so now that we have that graph, we're going to go from the blue, because that was our original. So just I'm going to kind of point to it, the blue one, to the green. Now here's actually what happens. It's a little confusing, so I just want to show you. This is actually called a vertical stretch, and here's why. If I go from the blue to the green, I'm just going to draw a little arrow. It's stretching vertically. You see how it's going up, and like this point, it stretches up to here. So it's a vertical stretch. So, all right, let's check out the other one then. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my blue to the purple. This is actually called a vertical compression. So look here from the blue to the purple, that's called a vertical compression. Compression means you know, kind of like shrinking. So it vertically compresses, and I'm going to write that down in my notes as well. Now, just so you guys know, you're going to be covering this a lot more when you are in algebra, geometry, algebra 2 a little bit. So for now, we're just going to be worried about transforming them algebraically mostly. But I just wanted to show you on the graph what it looked like. Okay, let's do this one now. Okay, so again, I started with my blue x squared. You can see it here. Okay, now this time I'm going to start with this rule. It says take the function, multiply just the x value by 2. So look what I did in green here. Here's my blue one, my original. I took just the x value, times it by 2, then I wrote the squared. Now let's see what happens. So again, remember I'm going from blue to green. Now in this one, this time it looks like it went this way, from my blue to my green. This is actually called a horizontal compression. So let's write that down. It's a horizontal compression. So it's going sideways, horizontal, and it's like squeezing in or getting skinnier. So that's a compression. Okay, let's look at the second one. This one, it says take just the x value, times it by 1/2. So again, I took just the x value, times it by 1/2, and then put the squared, and it turned into this purple one. So let's look from going from blue to purple this time. So from blue to purple, it looks like it's getting wider this time. So this time, it's called a horizontal stretch. So it's stretching out. It's getting way wider. So go ahead, get that down in your notes. And then remember, you're going to learn a ton more about this in future math courses, but this is just a little introduction to it. And hopefully you guys can see that it did get wider. From the blue to the purple, it stretched horizontally. Same thing from the blue to the green, it stretched, or it compressed horizontally. Okay, so here are your new notes, the rest of your table that we started filling in the last video that we need to finish filling in. Okay, so when you multiply your whole function by a number, okay, if this number, if you take the absolute value of it and it's bigger than 1, so let's say I put a 2 out here, it's going to be a vertical stretch. Now if I put a negative 2 out here, it's still going to be a vertical stretch, okay, because the absolute value of negative 2 is 2. That's bigger than 1. It's still going to be a vertical stretch, but it's also going to, then it might do a little flip too. Okay, now if this number is a fraction, that's what this means. If it's between 0 and 1, if it's a fraction out here, and it can be positive or negative, then it's going to be a vertical compression. So if I put a 1/2 out here, it will be a vertical compression. If I put a negative a 1/2, it'll vertically compress, plus it'll flip. Because remember my negative signs, it's going to also flip. Okay, this one, if I take my function and I only multiply the x value by a number, if this number is bigger than 1, the absolute value of it is bigger than 1, it's going to be a horizontal compression. So it's actually going to get like kind of skinnier. Okay, so even if this was a negative 2, because watch here, the absolute value of negative 2 is definitely bigger than 1, so that's going to be a horizontal compression. If this number here is less than 1, when I take the absolute value of it, so let's say a 1/2 is between 0 and 1, it's going to be a horizontal stretch. So it's kind of opposite of what you would think for this one. It's a fraction. It's actually going to stretch it wider. Okay, and then these ones are a little bit easier. If the negative sign is out front, it's going to flip it over the x-axis. If you take the opposite of the entire function, it reflects over the x. And then if you only take the opposite of the x value, it's going to reflect over the y-axis. Okay, so please make sure you have those rules down. All right, so just so you guys know, our main focus that we're going to kind of test you on, we did a lot of exploration, so you could see what's going to happen to functions. Your main focus is going to be if I give you some functions, let's say I give you these two functions, a line or a parabola, I'm going to ask you to be able to transform it algebraically using any rule. Maybe I'm going to say do f of x, the function, add 2. Okay, you will have to be able to take this function then, 3x plus 1, add 2 to it, rewrite it as 3x plus 3, then you'll kind of have to describe what happens. And I'm going to be showing that a little bit more in the next video, but you should know, okay, this is going to make it translate or slide up 2 units. Okay, obviously the slope stayed the same. Hopefully you can figure out the y-intercept changed, but you would need to be able to do something like that. Okay, another thing I might have you do is I might give you f of x minus 2 like this, and then you're going to have to transform this one. Now again, if you did that, hopefully you would be able to do, it says take the x value minus 2. So I'm going to take just that x value, minus 2 squared plus 1. Now you could leave it like that, or you can multiply it out. And again, I'm going to go through that in the next video. But hopefully you know that this is actually going to translate it to the right 2 units. It's going to slide that parabola to the right 2 units. That's what you're going to have to be able to tell me, and you're going to have to be able to rewrite it. So if you have any questions, please reach out to your math teacher, because I know this is hard doing online. So please ask questions, and then there will be another video tomorrow kind of explaining a little bit more in depth what you will have to be able to do. Thanks, and have a good day.